Hello guys and welcome back to a pretty quick video. I just saw the James Vowles interview where he essentially said that, Logan Sergeant has got a few weeks, let's just give him 4 weeks, and obviously Alex Albon has signed a new long-term deal. Just quickly for Alex Albon, this wasn't enough to make like a full proper video about, but just quickly for Alex Albon, he is in a weird predicament because I'm not sure if any of you guys have been noticing the state of Formula One, but there isn't any room for teams to really cohabitate two big talents long term. If you think top to bottom in terms of the top five teams, there's really like a 1-2 driver system going on. Even Mercedes, where you could say that there's both top drivers in terms of Lewis and George. You can tell that, behind the scenes, Lewis has been clashing with the team who have been trying to essentially phase him out. Even in Ferrari, where Sainz has been doing so well, across his 4 years there, he's been a really solid driver. Since he's not the number one in the team, there really isn't any job security, if you want to call it that. And that goes to basically any other team. I think the only reason McLaren really works is because of the difference in experience and the fact that they're not actually competing with each other. Like Oscar isn't expected to go out and defeat Lando. So it brings down tension quite a bit. And Oscar's still finding his feet. But if you're like an Alex Albon, like imagine Alex Albon going into Mercedes. If they're close, it can quickly start to turn into a war of who has that number one spot in the team. And Alex Albon really and truly knows that he needs to have that number one spot in a team that can fight for a championship or get wins or just be higher than where Williams is now. And it seems like he couldn't get that, It seems like all of the number one spots have been locked down, and it doesn't seem like in Formula One that anyone wants to do a Nico Rosberg, Lewis Hamilton anymore. So from that perspective, I do understand where he has decided to stay at Williams, because Williams is a safe bet. They trust him. They've been on the rise, and hopefully they can continue. And if James Vowles has managed to continue, or he's managed to convince him that they're going to continue growing, then I guess there isn't really many better options out there. Flipping over to Logan Sergeant, obviously he said he's going to give Logan a few weeks. Now, that is very corporate talk for if he doesn't do something really good in Imola, he is out. Which, let's be honest, we all know he won't do. So he's out. And before, I was feeling quite sorry for Logan Sergeant when his car got taken in Australia. I thought that was so unfair. But then Japan happened, and he made that, bad error, which put him in the gravel. And you can say what you want about pit stops and whatever, but pit stops aside, that error ruined his race by his own mistake. And I think it was at that point I genuinely went, you know what? Logan Sergeant probably isn't of the level that is needed to progress Williams as a team, or maybe in F1 in general. And it's pretty telling when a driver, we can all tell when a driver is really, really bad, because not to be like funny, but the memes tell us so, There's someone like Stroll who is bad, but he has his occasional moments, so he gets like a hate. But when you're genuinely like the worst driver on the grid, you don't even get hate anymore. You just get people making funny memes and jokes with you. Like you have King Latifi, you have Mazepin or whatever, and you have what the heck is a kilometer. It's gotten to the point where, if you're the worst driver on the grid in Formula One, you're just going to get clowned. Nobody's really going to be hating, saying, get this guy out of Formula One. They're just going to clown you because it's pretty obvious. You don't want to beat a dead horse. It's pretty obvious that he's, the worst driver on the grid at the moment. Dare I say he's worse than Nick De Vries. Even Nick De Vries was close to Yuki Tsunoda and, occasionally beat him. Logan Sergeant, not even by fluke, never beat Alex Albon in qualifying. Not even by fluke. I don't even know how that's possible. How do you not even fluke together a good lap, good enough to be a teammate? And maybe he even had a bad day. I don't want to make a whole video about this, but the point of the matter is I don't feel sorry for Logan Sergeant anymore. And just as a wider chasm of the whole driver market right now, everyone said silly season's going to be so crazy. Silly season's going to be so crazy. It wasn't. Silly season was very underwhelming. It was very underwhelming. and it is still pretty underwhelming. And everyone could most likely have predicted all of the moves that came about. I think the Lewis move was probably the only interesting move to happen. Maybe, who is going to fill that Mercedes seat is also going to be an interesting thing to see. But again, that seat is going to be filled by Kimi Antonelli in the future. So whether it's filled by Sainz in 2025, we know that even if it's filled by him in 2025, by 2026 or 2027, they're going to be trying to boot him out again. So he probably shouldn't try and take the 1-year deal at Mercedes if that is what he is offered. Obviously, the kick guys or the Sauber guys or Alfa, whatever you want to call them, they're going to be changing to Audi in 2026. And Nico Hulkenberg has signed on for the future with them. And it does seem like they're going to get rid of both of their kick drivers in terms of Zhou and Bottas. But if they were to keep a driver, it does seem like they are leaning towards Zhou, which personally I would, I'm a fan of Bottas. I have been a fan of Bottas for a long time. So I would personally prefer them to keep Bottas because I do think he's the better driver. I don't think that's very controversial. I'm curious as to where Valtteri would go, or if Valtteri would manage to actually stay in F1 if he loses that Alfa Romeo seat. I don't know where Valtteri would slip into the grid, and maybe you guys can tell me. But he hasn't had much press. Not many people have been talking about where is Valtteri Bottas going to go for 25, 26 and beyond. He got this multi-year deal from Alfa Romeo in 2022 that would, I guess, see him off for a long time, but maybe you didn't see him off long enough because it seems like that deal was just like a placeholder till maybe an Audi comes in hindsight, which, it's just not good. Hopefully he can get a seat. If he can't, you guys tell me if you think he's going to stay in Formula One. I personally think that maybe he might get a 1 year at Mercedes. Maybe. But even then, that doesn't even sound right, me saying that out loud. So, and just a last note. I was browsing a lot of, Formula One pages that have been documenting a lot of upgrades that have been coming to the cars. Ferrari brought a massive upgrade. Mercedes brought one in Miami. Red Bull supposedly brought one in Miami and now in Imola. And I've had some people comment in some previous videos saying that, what I think of certain upgrades coming to teams. And to be honest, I don't really care about upgrades. A team can say they've brought upgrades here, there, and everywhere, but until we see the performance on track, it doesn't matter how many upgrades you've brought. I'm more interested in where you actually move on qualifying day, on race day, than the pure, novelty of covering this team brought upgrades, because upgrades don't mean much. Mercedes brings upgrades all the time and they literally go backwards. Aston Martin in 2023 brought a myriad of upgrades and they literally went backwards, really far backwards actually. So I think it's more important to pay attention to what's going on track than to just say, well, things are going to get better, or this team might be really quick because they're bringing upgrades. Upgrades don't always equal speed. In fact, sometimes a team can bring upgrades and it may take them, 2, 3, 4 race weekends till you actually start to see the benefit of them before they start to understand what setup changes and certain things they require to get the most out of those said upgrades.